Hi, this is Sweet Life, and I'm Natasha, back at it with a review and discussion of The Sixth Sense. The Sixth Sense is a 1999 M. Night Shyamalan film about a young boy with the sixth sense, the ability to see dead people. The unwelcome visions of ghosts isolate Cole Sear, played by Haley Joel Osment, from the people around him as he's regarded as strange and possibly mentally ill. Dr. Malcolm Crowe, played by Bruce Willis, a child psychologist, attempts to connect with Cole to understand the child's seemingly abnormal behavior while also navigating his relationship with his wife, which has become distant. Under different circumstances, this would be a horror movie, but the combination of Cole's vulnerability and Malcolm's compassion transforms the film into a different but incredibly riveting thriller with a twist. Crowe begins speaking to Cole. He begins seeing him as sort of like his psychologist, attempted to help him to maneuver what would be unsettling for a lot of people, being able to see dead people. And actually, to start out, he's not aware that that's what's going on, right? There are these strange occurrences that happen around Cole. He lives with his mom, who's single, and the first thing we see with them being at home, right, is she's getting him ready for school. He has a spot on his tie. She steps away for a second, sits him at the table for him to eat breakfast, and in just those brief seconds of her stepping out the room, coming back, all of the kitchen cabinets are open. It's like everything is in disarray. How would you even, it terrifies her, but it's like one in a strange series of occurrences that happen around Cole. Obviously, his mom is curious about him, right? But they're just like these strange occurrences, right? It's like she walks into the room. As the audience, you get the sense that something's wrong here because, first of all, how on earth would he manage to open all that stuff in that short space of time? And he's just sitting there to add to it, palms flat against the table, gripping for life. And you just get the inkling that something's not right here. In Malcolm's home, he's married. Him and his wife don't have children, but there's like a sort of coldness between them. You know, he's reaching out, but she's a bit closed off to him. In watching The Sixth Sense, it's one of these movies with a major twist at the end. So it's a movie that you really should watch twice. The first time through so that you get to enjoy the twist at the end, but then a second time through to watch it through new eyes. Knowing the twist helps to put so many things in a different perspective. It's like watching two completely different movies. So when you see the film, right, with the ignorance of what the twist is, and then watching it knowing the full story, it gives a different meaning to different events throughout the movie. Throughout the film, we see that Malcolm has two things going on in his life. On the one side of it, we see him and his wife where he's working quite a bit. He's not at home. He puts a lot of time into his practice, into his work as a child psychologist, and it's resulted in seemingly some distance between him and his wife. He's not really spending as much time with her as he should, and part of it is that some of his work comes home with him. Early on in the film, actually the very few scenes of the film, we see that he's at home, he's received this award and acknowledgement for his work. And him and the wife, they go upstairs, they find a broken window, and it turns out that one of his former patients has broken into the house, and he is having a mental health crisis. Unfortunately, he shoots Malcolm in the stomach, and the scene then ends there, picks up a year later, at which point there's still this distance, or there's this greater distance between him and his wife. He is off on his way to work, and he approaches Cole and expresses that he's there to help him. Cute little kid, a little bit awkward. At that age, and especially even when you get older, people, children especially, who are a bit outside of the norm, can sometimes find themselves on the outside looking in, being socially ostracized. And so this kid, he's not harmful to anyone, right? He's just a little bit different. It leads to some distance between him and the kids around him, the people around him, which causes concern with his mom. Some of the things he says, the way he expresses himself, it catches people off guard. It's like, for example, he mentions to Malcolm that he drew a picture, and that when he drew this picture, it was so disturbing that the teachers called a meeting. His mom had to come in. She was crying, and because it was so upsetting, because it upset everyone around him, he's now decided to keep these things to himself. But there are like these other little instances of things coming out, right? The teachers and students around him, right? It leads to these uncomfortable moments. There's a distance between Malcolm and his wife. She goes out to dinner by herself, doesn't invite him along. She sleeps by herself. He tries to talk to her. She seemingly ignores him. Another guy stops by the house and asks her out. She kind of kindly brushes him off, but effectively there's this distance. It seems like they're breaking up, heading towards a divorce. And Malcolm is still kind of holding out hope that they might be able to work things out. It takes a little while, right? His reactions with people are awkward, but he eventually reveals to Malcolm that he sees dead people. They tell him things, they speak to him, sometimes they harm him. And it's something that he keeps to himself because he's an observant and astute little boy. And he realizes that people regard him as being strange, as being different, but instead of trying to understand him, they just regard him as being a freak. They regard him as being weird. And really, the only person in his life that seemingly accepts him and doesn't look at him as being weird is his mom. And so when this weird stuff happens, he doesn't quite feel comfortable opening up to her, explaining to her exactly what's going on. And Malcolm is actually the only other adult that really takes the time to reach out to him to understand what's going on. But he's apprehensive because he feels like Malcolm won't be able to help him. And so we see that Malcolm is really making an effort. He really wants to help. Malcolm is going through his own problems with his wife at home, but it puts things in perspective when we realize the little boy, he sees dead people and Malcolm is one of them. So the wife's distance from him is not her being distant, it's that he died a year before. She's not being distant, she's actually mourning, right? She's sad that he's passed away. This is one of those kinds of movies where you have like a slow unfolding, right? There are clues and hints along the way that add up to kind of reveal at the end, right? And so there's this one scene after Cole and Malcolm had met, and we see the mom because there's a story going on with her as well, right? Like her awakening and realization as things move along, where it looks like she's coming back from a run. She's dressed in sweats, has on headphones, and she comes across this wall, or rather with Cole as a kid, at different points as a kid. There's what appears to be at first glance like a lens flare, this bright spot of light. But the thing about it is that you notice these are pictures from different moments in Cole's life. He's different ages, but Cole's eye is drawn toward this spot of light in each and every one of these pictures. It's something that like catches your attention. Looking at it, we see the mom kind of picking up on this thing, this little bit of light. You know, he writes these notes, which are like streams of consciousness. It seems to be notes that Cole has jotted down, and they're quite disturbing. As well as when Cole arrives at school, he pauses outside of the building, is apprehensive about going in. At first I thought he was just nervous, right? But he bites a bullet, goes into class, sits down. The teacher is talking about the history of the city, the school in particular. So he bites up the nerve to enter the school, and the teacher is talking about the history of the city, the school in particular. It was previously a courthouse, but Cole mentions that it's actually the place where executions used to take place. And actually both things could be true. Cole attends the party of a kid in his class. He's sort of like the odd man out. He's regarded as being different from the other kids, and as a result, he's somewhat socially ostracized. But some of the parents are nice enough where the kid who's having the party, his dad makes him invite Cole. Cole's mom explains to the other parents it's been like a year since he's been invited to any birthday parties or anything like that. The kids, unfortunately, end up locking him in there, which leads to some kind of an episode where he passes out and his mom has to take him to like the children's hospital. He has all of these bruises and whatnot that she can't really explain, doesn't know where they came from. And the doctor seeing this, it makes them suspicious. And it's at this point that Malcolm finally gets Cole to open up to him. And it's at this point that he tells Malcolm that he sees dead people. It's good that he reveals this to Malcolm, right? That he sees dead people. I think it's at that point that the movie really begins, right? Or it changes pace. There are little hints along the way that things are wrong in the house, right? And there's a turning point, actually, before you get to the big reveal, where basically Cole, with the help of Malcolm, figures out and makes sense of why these people, these dead people, are visiting him, why he's seeing them. And so it's like initially, it's this very fearful thing for him. It's scary because they create problems for him. But when he gains an understanding of it, it transforms the interactions that he has with them. It's a lot of responsibility to put on a kid, but him seeing these people, he's able to communicate with them. He can understand what it is that they need, right? Like they come to him because they need help basically transitioning, let's say finding peace in the afterlife. And so one of the most emotional or impactful are like this little girl that visits him. Quite a few people visit him at home, but this one in particular like threw me off, right? There's this theory, I guess, the way that it's usually understood, ghosts and spirits, right, is that they inhabit or they haunt a place to which they had a connection, meaning either they died there, they lived there, they had some kind of significance in their life. At the school, he actually sees that people, like when he walks the hallway, he sees people who have been hanged. It helps him to better understand them, to better understand himself, and to find peace within himself. And in being able to now understand them, help them, they're no longer something to be afraid of. And so it's like, actually, in watching the movie, once the film reached that point, to me, like, it really wasn't that scary anymore, right? It wasn't like a horror movie. The film reached that point, and it's like, I guess it became a drama because it wasn't even like a thriller anymore, right? And so he interacts with the young girl and helps her to reconnect with her dad, right? Helps to kind of answer some questions about her death. So it's like, what would you call this? A thriller? Maybe a drama or something like that? At first, Malcolm seemingly doesn't really believe Cole. He's somewhat dismissive of it until he's sitting and listening to tape sessions from one of his clients. And like he kind of finagles the audio and realizes that he'd left Vincent in a room alone. And basically there are some similarities, some commonalities between Cole and Vincent. Vincent being the young man that shoots Malcolm at the start of the film. And so there's this thing of him being regarded as weird. He's also a social outcast. He has some emotional problems, but he can't find any help or relief. And so he shares some similarities with Cole, and Malcolm actually points this out, that maybe he wasn't able to help Vincent, but in helping Cole, it would be like having a second chance. In listening back to the tapes with Vincent, it gave him a greater understanding and made him a believer, right? That Cole was seeing and speaking to dead people. And now, becoming a believer, it better enables him to help Cole. As in the film, many of the characters, the dead people that interact with Cole, they need something from him. In this case, Malcolm is able to give something to Cole. He's able to help Cole navigate this sixth sense, this ability that he has that causes so much trouble for him. He helps Cole to understand it, to find peace with it, and then with that, to find peace in his own life, a way to manage this difficulty. But in helping Cole get what he needs to manage and deal with ability he has, Malcolm helps himself as well. Right? It gives Cole the comfort, or rather the tools, to begin speaking to his mom about what he's experiencing. But it also gives Malcolm the tools to communicate with his wife about the seeming difficulties in their relationship. And that leads to like the second transformation. This time occurring for Malcolm, where he comes to realize, and this is like the great reveal, which is that Cole sees him and interacts with him because he was actually killed by Vincent. That first scene in the film, it would seem to imply to us, because we see Malcolm seemingly fine a year after the shooting, and would assume that he survived. But the reality is that he was actually killed. And this is revealed at the end of the film. And as part of that, you kind of have like these flashback moments to give you a different perspective with the knowledge now that Malcolm is actually dead. So it's like early on in the film when Cole comes home, him interacting with Cole is initially apprehensive, right? It's important because of what he's seeing and experiencing, and he has like this secret that he keeps to himself. But part of it is that Cole realizes that Malcolm is dead like the others, right? But Malcolm doesn't know that he's died just like the others. And so it is that he's trying to be like this psychologist to this kid, and it's like we never actually see him enter or leave any rooms, because Cole's mom doesn't know that he's a ghost, right? It seems like they're sitting there together, but you notice that the two of them never say anything to each other. During all of the interactions with his wife, like when she's having dinner by herself at home or out at the restaurant, even with him talking to her, she never replies back to him. She's on antidepressants, which he sees, but he's like a mental health professional. And he walks into the bathroom, sees the bottle of antidepressant medication, and this is a surprise to him. This is something that I think a husband and wife would discuss with each other, but he's surprised to see this in her bathroom. When she goes out to dinner by herself, when she's, just setting the table for one, this new guy in the picture, you'd have to ask the question, if they haven't gone through a divorce, if they're still living in the house together, how would this other man be in the picture? But the reality is that it's not that she's upset with him or she's angry or, they're moving towards divorce. The reality is that he's died, right? She's not ignoring him. She's not giving him the silent treatment. She's not being emotionally distant. It's that she's living and he's dead. And it's like these little moments that you think back over and it puts things in perspective. Now, granted, in reviewing this movie, I've seen it. The way the film comes together is incredible. The acting is great. The little boy that plays Cole, it's like everyone played their part incredibly well. All of the different parts just came together. The visuals, the little hints and whatnot that were dropped along the way, the breadcrumbs to this big reveal. The story was incredible. It's like everything came together very, very well to make an incredible movie. And even all these years later, I think not having seen the movie before and seeing it for the first time, where you're unaware of the plot twist, if you like thrillers and things like that, I think you might enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and check out my movie review playlist. Go ahead and click that thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and share it on social media.